Section 1. St. Patrick's Day, Hey Patty, and the opening mood. Theo Von opens the episode in a loose, affectionate St. Patrick's Day mood, turning the holiday into a comic memory reel rather than a polished monologue. He riffs on Hey Patty, tying the phrase to a girl from his childhood neighborhood who rarely got to go anywhere, except when she wheeled the garbage cans out to the curb. The host paints her with a mix of humor and tenderness. She would dress up for the task, wear her mother's lipstick, and hide shyly behind the trash can when the neighborhood boys called out to her. The image that sticks is Theo's detail that she smiled so hard she get lipstick on her earlobes, a line that captures the episode's emotional tone, goofy, observant, and unexpectedly gentle. That memory becomes a small thesis about joy. Theo does not frame the story as cruelty or mockery. Instead, he lingers on how meaningful it can be to see someone get joyed out. It is a classic solo episode move from him, using a ridiculous anecdote to reach for something honest. The holiday greeting quickly widens into a broader commentary on how little most people actually know about St. Patrick, despite treating March 17 like a national excuse for public chaos. Theo recalls seeing people getting blasted in Rochester, celebrating a figure they could not identify, while one intoxicated father hauled a baby home in a wagon with multiple takeout orders stacked on top just to keep them warm. The exaggeration is funny, but it also sketches a familiar American holiday scene, pageantry detached from history. The host then looks. Section 2. Albuquerque, green chilies, and the beauty of a place. After the St. Patrick's Day prelude, Theo shifts into stories from a quick trip to Albuquerque, which becomes one of the episode's strongest comic settings. He jokes that the city's name has so many syllables, so many kirks in it, that by the time someone finishes saying it, you're gone. But beneath the bits, he expresses real affection for the place and its people. He describes Albuquerque as very Latino, full of hardworking families, kindness, and a visible trade culture that seems woven into daily life. His humor exaggerates everything toward construction, kids tossing drywall in the street, homeless signs edged neatly like carpentry projects, dog houses with excellent shingles. The running joke is that everyone there is somehow in the trades, even if the city itself still looks like it could probably use a little bit of construction. The host is careful to root the jokes in admiration. He says that many of America's hardest workers right now are Mexican laborers, while also adding the broader point that different cultures have taken their turns historically in carrying difficult labor. That qualification matters to him. He wants the joke and the appreciation both to survive. His description of Albuquerque is broad and cartoonish, but it is not cynical. He says plainly that there are a lot of great people there and that Mexican culture has a blast, an awkward but revealing phrase that conveys his admiration for communal energy and spirit. One of the trip's recurring motifs is New Mexico's obsession with green chilies. Theo makes it sound like a civic religion in his telling. Section 3. Stepping back from dating and trying to work on the magnet, the episode then pivots into a more vulnerable check-in, as Theo explains that he has started taking a break from dating and from social interaction with women. He presents it without drama, saying the decision has actually been going pretty good. The host frames the break as an attempt to create more room for self-reflection and to reconnect with his higher power. Rather than talking about heartbreak or a specific failed relationship, he describes a general need to get things on track better, especially internally. His main metaphor is magnetism. Theo says he thinks every person is like a magnet, attracting certain things and being drawn towards certain places. Sometimes that works well, other times, a person has to check in on the magnet and make sure it is functioning properly. It is one of the more memorable images in the episode because it allows him to talk about emotional patterns without becoming clinical. He jokes that over the years, he has been attached to some good metals and even some precious metals, but the larger point is serious. He wants to understand what in him is pulling him toward the people and situations he keeps finding. The break from dating has given him more time and more space in his head. He says that without the constant movement of romantic pursuit and social energy, he can hear himself a little better. That breathing room matters because he is trying to understand his own resistance to care. One of the most revealing moments comes when he admits that sometimes he simply does. Section 4. Prayer, Exhaustion, and speaking plainly about addiction. Theo deepens the self-examination by talking directly about prayer, exhaustion, and his ongoing struggle with pornography and masturbation. He says he recently realized he had not been praying much and could not fully explain why. In conversation with his therapist, he tried to make sense of that avoidance. He emphasizes that he is not against praying and genuinely wants a better relationship with his higher power. What troubles him is that he seems to shrink back from practices that might actually help him. He lands on a difficult idea. Maybe he is scared of receiving a real answer from God. Asking for guidance sounds noble in theory, but he admits that part of him fears what it would mean if that guidance arrived clearly. A direct answer would create responsibility. It might require change, commitment, or the surrender of habits he still clings to. That fear is bound up with another feeling he confesses more bluntly. He gets tired of being the one who has to come to his own rescue. He understands that adult life often works that way, and he says he is doing great overall, but there is still fatigue in always having to be the person who pulls himself back into line. The confession becomes more specific when he talks about pornography. Theo says he had been doing well avoiding porn and masturbation and then slipped up yesterday. He does not dramatize it or bury it in euphemism. He talks about it directly, though still in his comedic style. He notes the familiar pattern of making progress for 4 or 5 days, sometimes. Section 5. Why he doesn't speak on everything, and why some things still demand a voice from personal struggle. Theo shifts into a broader reflection on public pressure and the expectations placed on anyone with an audience. He says people often message him asking why he does not talk about a certain cause, conflict, or current event, Iran, as he jokes, nodding to even the uncertainty of pronunciation. He responds with a principle that feels central to his solo episodes. Not speaking about everything is not the same as not caring. Sometimes he does not know enough. Sometimes he is burned out from consuming what he calls so much horrible stuff. Sometimes the information ecosystem itself feels engineered to overwhelm and ruin you. He argues that there are algorithms built to keep people emotionally flooded, and that one survival skill is learning not to let the entire world's catastrophe pipeline colonize one's mind. He says he has responsibilities to his own life, to the people around him, to work, to family, and he has to remain functional. That means he cannot absorb every issue at full emotional volume all the time. He is not apologizing for that, but he wants to explain it. The explanation is aimed not only at his audience, but also at anyone struggling with the modern demand to have an informed, visible opinion on everything at once. Still, he does not want that position mistaken for indifference. He says he does try to speak where he feels compelled, and when he does not know enough, he would rather learn than posture. He mentions that sometimes guests are already booked in advance, which. Section 6. Fear, politics, and Theo's anger over America's relationship with Israel. The episode's most serious and controversial stretch comes when Theo addresses America's relationship with the Israeli government. He says plainly that he feels deep discomfort with the connection, specifying that he is talking about the Israeli political leaders. His language is intense and emotional. He describes the current leadership as a regime and says it seems as though they just want to cause pain. He references Gaza, saying authorities don't even know where all the bodies from Gaza are and have already moved on to attacks elsewhere, with America now associated with those actions. What stands out is not polished geopolitical analysis, but moral alarm. Theo says he does not understand why the United States is so beholden to Israel's government or why leaders across political parties have sustained that relationship for so long. He says he does not understand Donald Trump's relationship to the Israeli leadership, though he also notes that this involvement predates Trump and spans multiple administrations. To him, the present moment simply feels more extreme and more scary. He repeatedly frames the issue in terms of voice and future consequence. He believes that if Americans do not speak up now, our children won't have the chance to speak up either, whether because of law, surveillance, or something worse. He mentions bills being introduced and surveillance infrastructure being put in place. The argument is not only about foreign policy, it is about the erosion of civil freedom at home. He also expresses disappointment that many religious leaders have remained silent, saying he does not understand that silence either. Theo is. Section 7. From Hollywood frustration to building something outside the system after the political intensity, Theo redirects the episode toward creative autonomy and the making of Busboys, the film he stars in with Spade. Before discussing the movie itself, he lays out the frustration that led to it. He says that for years in Hollywood, he went through the standard rituals: pitch meetings, TV development, auditions, waiting for decisions from executives, and found the process spiritually draining. In his telling, he was constantly being evaluated by people nothing like me, often people with no background in comedy, deciding whether his voice had value. The issue was not just rejection. It was the feeling that gatekeepers with narrow assumptions were defining what kinds of people and stories were allowed. Stand-up, he says, was different. It was the one form no one could simply hand to a producer's child. A role might be gifted through nepotism, but stand-up is you. Whether people like him on stage or not, he argues, They are at least seeing the real thing. That insistence on directness explains why podcasting became such an important next step for him. He says he started podcasting because he wanted his own voice, not lines written by someone else, and not some reductive caricature of the kind of Southern person Hollywood expected him to play. He pushes back on portrayals of people from where he is from as simplistic or uniformly racist, arguing that the communities he knows are more diverse and intricate than the stereotype machine allows. That dissatisfaction with the system is the conceptual backdrop to Busboys. Theo frames the movie not just as a Section 8, David Spade, Arizona Busboy Bonds, and the making of Busboys. Theo's account of how Busboys came together becomes more personal when he talks about David Spade. Their friendship, he explains, began through Adam Eggett at the Comedy Store and deepened over time. One early memory is almost childlike in its significance. Spade once gave him a Joe Dirt hat. Theo says that, when he first saw Joe Dirt, he thought it was basically a documentary about a kid abandoned at the Grand Canyon, and because he felt emotionally abandoned in his own childhood, the movie struck a deep chord. The story is funny, but it also reveals why Spade meant something to him before they were friends. Theo goes out of his way to praise Spade's character. He calls him a great friend, says he has a big heart, and remembers him bringing gas after Theo ran out on the interstate, nearly getting hit in the process. He also describes being welcomed into worlds he never expected to enter, fancy parties, celebrity circles, dinners where the silverware itself seemed worth stealing. Spade, in his telling, is both famous and unusually generous about sharing access. The key creative bond between them, though, came from shared work history. Both had been busboys in Arizona. Theo worked under restaurateur Sam Fox at one of Fox's first restaurants, Spade Bus Tables in Phoenix. That common past gave them a language, a work ethic, and a setting for the movie. Theo romanticizes it as bussing in the desert, complete with jokes about cleaning tables during water shortages, but the affection is real. Busboy life represents a kind of apprenticeship.